Welcome to the Partardez channel. Today, we explain Prophets Kings 2, chapter 18 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We're looking at one of the most intense, high-stakes moments in the entire Hebrew Bible. We are talking about the ultimate clash between the unstoppable, world-dominating Assyrian Empire and the tiny, vulnerable Kingdom of Judah. It is a chapter filled with religious reform, devastating military conquests, desperate payoffs, and an absolute masterclass in ancient psychological warfare. So let's just jump right in. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the context of Hezekiah's reign, then look at the tragic fall of Samaria. After that, we'll see Assyria's attack on Judah, analyze the Assyrian commander's terrifying speech, clarify the key ideas, and finally wrap up with some practical life lessons. Section 1. Context and Hezekiah's reign. The righteous king of Judah. Okay, let's open the text and go straight into verses 1 through 3. A new leader steps onto the historical stage, King Hezekiah of Judah. The text tells us he is exactly 25 years old when he takes the throne in Jerusalem, and he begins his 29-year reign during the third year of Hoshea, who was the king up in the northern kingdom of Israel. Now, right out of the gate, the narrative makes a huge definitive statement about Hezekiah's character. It says he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, following completely in the footsteps of his ancestor, King David. And he wasn't just sitting around having good thoughts, he was a man of serious action. He launches a massive, sweeping religious reform across the country. He systematically removes the high places, which were these local, unauthorized altars scattered around the countryside. He smashes the sacred stones and cuts down the pagan Asherah poles. Hezekiah is completely dedicated to purifying Judah and bringing all worship back to the central temple in Jerusalem. This dedication leads to an incredibly bold move in verse 4. The text says, Hezekiah broke into pieces the bronze snake that Moses had made. Now, think about the history here for a second. This object wasn't some random pagan statue. This was the literal bronze snake from the wilderness, the very object God used through Moses to save the Israelites from a deadly plague of venomous snakes centuries earlier. It was an incredibly sacred historical relic. But human nature is a funny thing. Over the generations, the people had turned this miraculous relic into a straight-up idol. They'd actually started burning incense to it. So Hezekiah, showing zero hesitation, smashes it. He essentially calls it Nehushtan, a wordplay that basically means just a piece of bronze. He's saying, I don't care about its history. If it's drawing us away from God, it's gone. And because of this fierce, uncompromising loyalty, verses 5 through 8 tell us that the Lord was with him. The text actually says there was no king like Hezekiah in Judah either before him or after him. He trusted God, he held fast to the commandments given to Moses, and as a result, he prospered. He even rebelled against the king of Assyria, refusing to be a vassal, and pushed back the Philistines all the way to the fortified borders of Gaza. Section 2. The Fall of Samaria. The northern kingdom exiled. But while things are going incredibly well in the south under Hezekiah, verses 9 through 11 describe an absolute nightmare unfolding in the north. Let's trace the chronological timeline the text gives us. In Hezekiah's fourth year, Shalmaneser, the mighty king of Assyria, marches his massive army against Samaria, the capital city of the northern kingdom of Israel. He surrounds it and lays a brutal, suffocating siege. Imagine the terror. For 3 grueling years, the people of Samaria endure starvation and relentless warfare. Finally, in Hezekiah's 6th year, the city's defenses break. Samaria falls. And the Assyrians don't just occupy the city. They employ their devastating imperial tactic of mass deportation. The king of Assyria physically rips the Israelites out of their homeland and marches them hundreds of miles to the east. The text is very specific about the geography. They are settled in Hala, in Gozan on the Habor River, and in the towns of the Medes. The entire northern kingdom is literally wiped off the map. Now, verse 12 doesn't let us wonder why this happened. It gives us a terrifyingly clear cause and effect. It explicitly states that Samaria didn't fall just because Assyria had better weapons or a larger army. It fell because the Israelites had not obeyed the Lord their God. They completely violated the covenant and ignored everything that Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded them to do. They wouldn't listen and they wouldn't obey. This is a stark black and white contrast. Down south, you have Hezekiah keeping the covenant and prospering. Up north, you have Israel breaking the covenant and being dragged into exile. And this tragic event sets a massive looming precedent, because now the Assyrian war machine has completely swallowed the north, leaving Judah completely exposed. Section 3. Assyria attacks Judah. Hezekiah's desperate tribute. And, sure enough, the crisis arrives. Fast forward to verse 13. It is now Hezekiah's 14th year as king. The new king of Assyria, Sennacherib, turns his sights southward and attacks all the fortified cities of Judah, capturing them one by one. The invincible Assyrian army is now right at Jerusalem's doorstep. The situation is incredibly dire. In verse 14, we see the sheer, crushing desperation Hezekiah feels. He sends a message to Sennacherib, who is currently stationed at Lachish, and he essentially surrenders. He says, "I have done wrong. Withdraw from me, and I will pay whatever you demand of me." Sennacherib's price? 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. This is an astronomical, almost unimaginable amount of wealth in the ancient world. To meet this impossible demand, verses 15 and 16 tell us, Hezekiah has to completely empty all the silver found in the temple of the Lord and in the royal treasuries. But even that isn't enough. Imagine the humiliation of this next moment. Hezekiah literally has to strip the gold overlay right off the doors and the doorposts of the temple of the Lord, doors he himself had overlaid, just to pay off the Assyrian king. He gives everything to buy their survival. Section 4. The commander's speech. Psychological warfare at the gates. But here's the devastating truth. The massive payment doesn't work. It doesn't buy peace at all. In verses 17 and 18, Sennacherib takes the gold, but he still sends a massive army from Lachish right up to Jerusalem. He sends his top 3 officials, the supreme commander, the chief officer, and the Rabshakeh. Now the Rabshakeh is essentially the chief field commander, and he acts as the mouthpiece for the Assyrian king. They position their massive forces at a very specific, highly strategic location, the aqueduct of the upper pool on the road to the washerman's field. Why there? Because that aqueduct controls the city's water supply. Standing there is a silent threat. We control if you drink. They call for King Hezekiah to come out, but Hezekiah sends out 3 of his highest-ranking officials instead: Eliakim, the palace administrator, Shibna, the secretary, and Joah, the recorder. What happens next, from verses 19 down to 25, is a chilling masterclass in ancient psychological warfare. The Rabshakeh doesn't attack the walls with battering rams just yet, he attacks the minds of the Judeans. He systematically targets every single pillar of their confidence. First, he mocks their military strategy, saying it's nothing but empty words. Second, he brilliantly twists Hezekiah's religious reforms against him. He says, "Aren't you relying on the Lord? But isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah removed?" You see, the Assyrian commander completely misunderstands the Israelite theology. He assumes that because Hezekiah tore down all those local altars, he must have angered the local god. He doesn't realize Hezekiah was actually purifying the faith. Then the Rabshakeh mocks their physical military weakness. He sarcastically offers to give them 2,000 horses if Hezekiah could even scrounge up enough men to ride them. Finally, he drops the ultimate psychological bomb in verse 25. He claims that the Lord himself ordered the Assyrians to march against Judah and destroy it. He tries to convince them that their own God has turned against them. He also brutally dismantles any hope they have of foreign rescue. In verse 21, the Rabshakeh specifically targets their potential alliance with Egypt, and his language is incredibly vivid. Listen to this mocking quote. "Look now, you are depending on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff, which pierces a man's hand and wounds him if he leans on it." Think about that imagery. If you're hiking and you put all your body weight onto a rotten, splintered walking stick, not only is it going to snap and fail to support you, but those sharp splinters are going to drive right through your hand and injure you. That is exactly what he's saying about Egypt. He's telling them, your allies are weak. Reaching out to them will only hurt you more. You are completely, utterly alone. This psychological pressure is so intense that the Judean officials start to panic. In verse 26, Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah nervously beg the Rabshakeh to please speak to them in Aramaic, which was the language of international diplomacy, rather than Hebrew. Why? Because the ordinary citizens and soldiers are sitting right there on the city wall, listening to every word, and the leaders don't want them to understand and panic. But the Rabshakeh knows exactly what he's doing. In verses 27 through 35, he flat out refuses. He wants a public panic. He purposefully shouts loudly in Hebrew so everyone can hear. And his threats become horrifically graphic. He tells the people on the wall that if they don't surrender, the siege will last so long they will be forced to eat their own filth and drink their own urine. And then he pivots to temptation. He bypasses the leaders completely, speaking directly to the citizens, saying, "Do not let Hezekiah deceive you. The Lord cannot deliver you. Make peace with me, surrender, and come out." He promises to take them away to a land just like theirs, a land of grain, wine, bread, and olive trees. He gives them a terrible choice: choose life and not death.
He is literally begging them to give up their identity, their land, and their God in exchange for a full stomach.
Section 5. Clarifications and Key Ideas. Understanding the plain text. Let's pause right here at the peak of the tension and clarify how we are reading this. We are using the traditional Peshat method. The Peshat method demands that we look closely at the plain, simple narrative, the most basic, literal meaning of the text right within its historical context. We aren't searching for deep mystical allegories or hidden secret codes here. And honestly, we don't need to. By sticking strictly to the Peshat, the text is incredibly rich. We are watching a grounded, historical account of unwavering faith colliding head-on with empirical, terrifying military might. We are seeing real people, Hezekiah trying to lead, the Rabshakeh manipulating the crowds, the terrified Judean officials shaking in their boots, all acting out a highly documented geopolitical crisis. So how does this intense standoff resolve in this chapter? Verses 36 and 37 bring it to a dramatic, almost cinematic close. The Rabshakeh finishes his boastful propaganda by essentially listing his resume of destruction. He screams out the names of all the gods of the other nations that Assyria has already crushed. Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? He yells. Did they save Samaria? So how can your Lord deliver Jerusalem? It is a wall of sound, loud, utterly confident, relying heavily on intimidation. But the Judean response is breathtaking. Total, absolute silence. The people on the wall didn't shout back, they didn't argue, they didn't riot or open the gates like the Assyrian commander hoped. They obeyed Hezekiah's strict command, do not answer him. The chapter ends with Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah tearing their clothes, a traditional sign of deep mourning and distress, and returning to King Hezekiah to report the devastating words they just heard. Section 6. Life Lessons and Recap. Applying the historical text. Before we wrap up, let's extract some incredibly practical life lessons from Hezekiah's ordeal. This text isn't just ancient history. It teaches us how to handle crises. Step 1. True reform requires removing comforting idols. Just like Hezekiah had to smash the Nehushtan, sometimes things in our own lives that used to be good or comforting actually become distractions from what is right. We have to be bold enough to clear them out. Step 2. Past success doesn't prevent future crises. Hezekiah did literally everything right. He was a righteous king, yet the Assyrian armies still showed up at his door. Doing the right thing doesn't make you immune to hardship. It simply builds the character you need to survive it. And step 3. Stand firm in silence when facing overwhelming intimidation. When an enemy, whether it's a person, a situation, or your own anxiety, is screaming at you, trying to induce panic and despair, you don't always have to argue back. Sometimes the strongest, most disciplined response is absolute silence. This entire historical siege leaves us with a profound, piercing question about resilience and faith in the face of absolute despair. The Rabshakeh didn't just threaten the Judeans with a horrific death. He offered them a comfortable alternative. He promised them a land of vineyards and honey if they would simply give up who they were and surrender. Hezekiah and the people on that wall had to decide right then and there if their covenant with the Lord was actually worth the terrifying, starving reality of a siege. So the question for us is this. When the world's most powerful forces mock your core beliefs and offer you a comfortable, easy surrender, will you remain steadfast in your covenant? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.